grace and blessing be upon
The only learning experience is the experience of continuous learning. My name is Sari Hamway. I'm the founder and CEO of the Franchise Trainer. My colleagues, except Amjad, have flown thousands of miles to be here with you today to share their knowledge in franchising. We have prepared a few points to discuss during our session, and my first invitation to you, Alan, investing in franchising is a good option for starting a business. My question to you, what are the advantages of investing in a franchise brand, of course, as opposed to starting your own business?
Right. Thank you, Sari. Thank you for the question. Thank you to the organizers and Monsha'at for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm deeply honored to be here. I think one of the things that we say most often in franchising, Sari, is in franchising, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. The investment that you make in a franchise brand provides many different returns. Significantly, you get the use of the brand, you get marketing support, training support, operations and systems support delivered to you most often by the franchisor. Add to that what you bring to the table as an entrepreneur, also the ability to benefit from economies of scale, a community of very like-minded entrepreneurs, other franchisees in the same brand, who are also committed to the success and are willing to share that with you. There are typically growth opportunities. There are typically favorable financing opportunities that are available to franchisees and to entrepreneurs looking to build and help brands build. And of course, there's always an exit. So having an established brand behind you can also help you with your exit plans. So I think entrepreneurs typically consider franchising because it's a complete package. And as an entrepreneur, if you can take an existing product that somebody else has already tested, that somebody else has already developed, that somebody has already put in the effort to do all the R&D, and then that accelerates your business plan 6 months or 12 months down the road because you're not building it from scratch anymore. That's why we see so many people adopting the franchise business model as a path to entrepreneurship.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much for your insight. But franchising comes with risks. There are some disadvantages in starting a franchise business, and I would invite Richard here to maybe mention some of the disadvantages in starting a franchise business and how to mitigate risks in starting a franchise business.
Thanks, Harry. I think the first thing that we ever have to look at is research. So with any business, you have to research fully, and a franchise is really no different. When we're looking at franchising, yes, someone's done the hard work for you, but in your own industry that you're going into, you need to understand it fully. The next thing is planning it and in detail. Don't rely on just the franchisor for everything. Understand that there are risks associated with it and plan everything as if it were your business starting from scratch. The next point would be, and I guess you know industry professionals on the stage, is find someone who is in the industry and ask them for their advice. It's a very difficult industry to be in. If you are getting into a long-term contract, you should be finding someone who you know is going to give you the right advice and has history of advising people. The next point is to be financially prepared. These are long-term contracts, 10, 20, 30 years, and if you're not financially prepared at the start, you'll never get it right. Understanding the marketplace is key to making this work. If you take a brand from another country, you're bringing it to the kingdom, you need to make sure that it's actually going to work here. It's not necessarily just because it works somewhere else, it's definitely going to work here. So while you have advantages of franchising, you still need to make sure you get it right. The last point I would say, with the way the kingdom is at the moment, I think the biggest risk right now would be not taking a risk. I think there's a huge opportunity here for any brand that wants to grow. Any franchisee has the opportunity to borrow money, to be able to expand as quickly as they can with everything that's going on here with the change. So I would expect everybody, if they can do, to take a risk.
That's great, but as an entrepreneur, how do you know that you're qualified to obtain the franchise rights for an international brand into the kingdom?
I think it comes down to your appetite for risk. If you are able to research, you're able to bring in the right people, staffing, you're able to understand that you may need partners. Not everybody is good at everything. So bring in the right people. If you're not good at finance, bring in someone who's good at finance. If you're not good at planning, bring someone who's going to help you plan it. If you're not good at HR, bring someone who's good at HR. Right. And that's the best way that you can mitigate all the risks involved and make sure the business works.
That's true. That's true. Thank you very much. Martin, I mean, with your experience in international franchising, and you're the most experienced in this panel in franchise marketing, and you have under your wing hundreds of franchise brands that you promote worldwide. What would be the criteria of choosing the right franchise partner?
Thank you, Sari, and thank you to Biban and Monsha'at for inviting us here. Evaluating and picking the right franchise brand is a big question, and it'll take more than the few minutes I have here, but let me cover some points that you should definitely consider when evaluating a franchise brand. The first thing you need to do is to look inwards. Evaluate your own experience and goals and those of your company before you begin your analysis of potential franchise opportunities. Do you want to operate a business where you already have experience? Or do you or your company want to diversify for strategic reasons or to take advantage of a market opportunity? Consider your capacity. Do you want to operate a single franchise, or do you want to build a bigger business through acquiring area or regional franchise rights? Do you want to be hands-on or manage your business from an investor level? And are there other personal or lifestyle goals that you want to meet? Obviously, as Richard just alluded to, budget is part of your evaluation of a franchise. The capital required to open a franchise, it requires a big building and a lot of equipment. A full-service restaurant, for instance, can run into the millions of dollars. On the other end of the spectrum, a service brand, a small box gym maybe, or a daycare center, you can get into it for a fraction of the price. And you've got to remember, there are franchises now for almost any type of business. Ask yourself if you want to franchise from a business that is already operating here in Saudi Arabia, or do you want to acquire rights for an international brand? There are advantages to either option. In the scenario where the brand is operating here in Saudi, brand awareness and proof of concept are already in place, which obviously can mitigate some risk. Bringing a brand in, an international brand in, offers the opportunity to introduce a differentiated product or service to your home market. This can possibly create a competitive advantage and an initial increase in demand. you should consider the type of agreement. In the international scenario, you may be able to secure an agreement giving you exclusive rights to the country, to the region, and this can become a very valuable asset. This agreement, this exclusivity, can become a very valuable asset as you grow your business. However, with an international brand, again, as Richard alluded to, you'll have to work to make sure that brand translates both economically and culturally. You'll also have to ensure that the franchisor can support you from their home country and check that there are no supply chain issues, trademarks are protected, IP is protected, etc. Once you've established the type of franchise you want to operate, you'll need to do your due diligence. Study the franchise disclosure document, in which the franchisor is required to share with you. The document outlines the rights granted by the franchise to the franchisee by the franchisor, as well as the franchisee's obligation to adhere to the maintenance of the franchise's brand. The disclosure document will also explain fees, which go beyond franchise fees and royalties. Things like technology fees, store opening fees, marketing fees, all have to be considered and will affect your bottom line. Meet with the franchisor's management team to make sure you understand their culture and the ongoing franchisee-franchisor relationship. Understand who and how they will be supporting you for initial and ongoing training, operational support, marketing support, and problem solving. If possible, review the financial stability of the franchisor. And lastly, talk to existing franchisees of the brand you want to acquire. This is probably the single most important piece of due diligence and something that's often missed. Are they receiving the support they need to grow their business? Are they meeting their expected financial goals? Even if the brand you're interested in is not yet here in Saudi Arabia, talk to the franchisees in their home country. Acquiring and operating a franchise brand can be a great business decision, and statistically, franchise businesses have a much greater chance of success than startups from scratch. But the single most important factor in the success of a franchise business is franchisee performance. So do your due diligence and go in with your eyes open. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. You talked about how an entrepreneur would pick up a good franchise brand. I want to look at it from a different angle. How would a franchisor pick up the right partner in the kingdom? How they evaluate? Would you want to expand on that part? How do you evaluate one of the capacity people who want to take the franchise?
That's a great question. And it's horses for courses, Sari. The franchisor will have the potential investor will have their own goals. They'll have their own budget. They'll have their own capacity. They'll have skills in certain areas. So it's so important that you identify an investor that values the brand and is able to work with you to meet the goals of the brand's international expansion.
That's great. Thank you very much. I mean, Alan, do you want to add something to what Martin has just said?
No, I think, like Martin said, you know, it's evaluating the right investor, finding the right partner, someone that you, as Richard mentioned, you're entering a 20 to 30-year relationship. In my experience working in franchise brands before moving to the International Franchise Association, people have invested 30+ years into a franchise brand. So it's a very long-term relationship that you're entering. So make sure it's the right relationship and to Martin's point about doing the due diligence by meeting with franchisees is probably one of the best ways of understanding the culture behind the brand.
Great. Richard, with your experience in the UK, Dubai, and the Kingdom, because obviously you have a business presence in all of them, and you help businesses to develop into a franchise. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, as a franchise consultant, how do you advise your franchisor to build the criteria for choosing the right partner?
I think it's also opportunity driven. Some brands are inundated with people who want to franchise them. Some brands are given, there's very few inquiries, but I think it has to be looked at on a day-to-day basis. You have to say, where is the opportunity going to lie? If we have 10 people who are interested in the brand, we have 10 choices of who we could go with, plus we'll be discussing with other people. If we have 150 people, then, we have a bigger opportunity. The most important thing is not to miss the opportunity. Yeah. I'm not suggesting that you go with everybody or go with anybody, but you have to look at it and say, is this our opportunity to get into the Kingdom now, or do we want to wait a year? How are we going to evaluate that? The opportunity is just as much driven by time as it is by the investor. So long as you as a franchisor can control their day-to-day, and you can work with them, and you feel that they have the vision that you have at the start, and they can move along with you, and you can train them correctly, then I think it's something you have to look at.
Yeah, that's great. I saved this for the last. Amjad comes from chemical engineering background. He was a leader of a number of telecommunication companies in the Kingdom. He's a franchisor and a franchisee, and of course a franchise consultant as well. So he has many hats. And I saved this question for you because if you're in business and you want to franchise your business, there are two things, and many people confuse the concept of growing a brand and scaling a brand. And that answer, needs your insight with your experience from different sides of the table doing business and franchising. What is the difference between growing a brand and scaling a brand?
Thank you very much, Sari. مساكم الله بالخير جميعا. So hopefully both will take you to increase your revenue, but it depends how you would like to tackle it.
Right.
So from my previous experience, I used to have a chain of restaurants that I had built myself. And at that time, while learning, it was like a difficult path to grow your business. And I started by one restaurant, and then it went up to 5 restaurants. Unfortunately, I closed it all. Why? Because I couldn't inject and do the growing method of that business by increasing resources of capital, or by human resources, or by even having the process itself. So failing to do such, it did not help me to grow my business.
True.
Okay.
Very true.
If we take it to the other way around, when we had this issue, I started looking at franchise as a base to take my business forward. And at that point of time, I decided to go into retail, fashion business. I have the love of that business, but at the same time, there is an ecosystem that you need to understand. And I thought that franchise is the opening door to scale up my business and moving forward to increase my revenue without a substantial, let us say, cost, increase in the cost, and hopefully meeting the revenues. So it's really important that you decide what is the appetite you have in this business, in area of growing your business or having it through other layers of investment. I think scaling up your business through franchise is really a good potential opportunity. especially if you have that brand with the experience that you had lived with it for a couple of years, where you had built your process, your team, your ecosystem, your supply chain, and you had tested that business properly in a way that you can do an assessment with advisors, consultant in franchise business, that can they do proper assessment of your business. And then you can build your franchise manual. It will cost you, okay, not a fortune, but it's going to cost you a good amount of money that it enable the complete system that you have. It enable your brand to be franchised in Saudi Arabia or even beyond, going to GCC or even internationally. The bottom line that you need to do that proper assessment in a way that you build this complete franchise ecosystem, the franchise division within your organization, and this definitely will expand your footprint within Saudi or internationally. This will add to your revenues. This will add to your equity and the brand itself. So it's a journey, but I think it is a proven journey, provided that you have the proper setup, the proper advisor, and at the end you're going to have your business there through different consultants, through different marketing agencies that they can expand your footprint globally.
Yeah, I like what you said, both growing a brand and scaling a franchise brand must lead to profits, yeah, more income. And I totally agree. The only radio channel a businessman listens to is WIFM. WIFM is an acronym for 4 words. What's in it for me? So whether you grow your brand organically or you scale your franchise brand, which means planning, having the roadmap, having to plan your organizational resources to support your growth. Growing a brand can happen by adding another branch and building a new owned location, but when franchising, you drive the expansion and the growth through franchising and by planning, having the right resources, including, of course, the franchise support packages, training programs, operating manual, and so forth. I have one question for everyone, and I would like you all to participate for the sake of benefiting the audience, our wonderful audience this evening. If you want to give an advice, a piece of advice for scaling a franchise brand, each one of you, I invite you to just, from the top of your head, say, what is your best advice to scale up a franchise brand? Start with Alan.
Thanks, Harry. I come from a numbers and a systems background. So I always think about the unit level economics of each franchise. So each franchise location has to have a unit level economic that makes sense for the franchise owner and the franchisor. Focusing on unit level economics and each individual unit's performance will ultimately result in a greater profitability of the entire brand, makes the brand more attractive to new investors, either to buy a franchise or to invest to help the franchise brand expand. And it also leads to happy franchisees, and happy franchisees lead to additional franchisees, lead to more inquiries, lead to the opportunity to expand and to scale your brand.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Great advice. Please,
yeah.
Matt. Yeah.
I mean, it's all scaling is about increasing your top line at a greater rate than you increase your expenses. So one very basic thing you can do is truly understand your customer. And a lot of businesses don't do this. Understand your customer, understand their profile, and market to those people. That way, you're maximizing the amount of money you spend on marketing, and you're obviously maximizing the top line because you're advertising to your customers.
Amjad?
So look at it as transparency.
Transparency.
Transparency between
Excellent point. I'd like that.
Yeah, between the franchisee and the franchisor, because at the end, this is a marriage. This is a business that's gonna spend, as Alan said, for 20 years plus. So as much as you're transparent and you trust, as much as you can grow this business. And it had been proven. I personally had this experience with one of the brands that I present as a franchisee in Saudi. And being transparent with them, with logic sense, it really adds to the value. Without that, I couldn't overcome Corona at that time when business were collapsing in some of the retail markets. So transparency and honesty.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you. Richard, your advice. I mean,
planning your expansion.
they want to take a franchise, but or maybe grow their business or scale up their franchise brand, their own business. And what would be the best advice to give somebody who wants to grow and scale up the brand?
Plan the expansion and execute it well with a lean team. Keep your costs as low as you can without jeopardizing the business. If you can keep your costs low, you can keep the team lean, you can keep them active at the start whilst you're getting into new markets and you're expanding as quickly as you possibly can. Later on you can scale up, but at that point you're in a position to be able to take advantage of what's going on.
Right. Am I allowed to add a point?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay,
Of course you are.
Thank you.
No problem.
Right. I mean, I think change is key. Your willingness to change as a business owner, as a franchisor, your preparedness to change, to accept change. Many businesses fail because of fear of change. The commitment to change as a franchisor will help you grow and scale your business. What I mean by change is organizational change, because running your own business is a different experience from operating a number of profitable and successful franchisees. You need different resources. You need different input in the business. Before you were running a burger store or a fashion store, which is great, you masterminded that, but when going into franchising, you're becoming a service provider to your franchisees. That's what I think is the important part. Be prepared for change. Amjad, I want to give you this opportunity. Key takeaway from this evening.
So I think the most important part is that franchise is really a tool, to be honest. It's a tool that people had experienced, and globally it's a practice that it had been proven successful. The very important part for franchisee is to select the proper brand or business, sector business that they will feel that they can have a passion and they can take it forward. And from there they can target the proper franchisor. And having that passion, it might convince them to give them the brand.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan, Catlett, Martin, Hancock, Amjad Arab, Richard K. My name is Sari Hamwi. I've been privileged to moderate this session with the elite of the franchise industry in the world. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience, and looking forward to meet with you again in future events organized by Biban and Monsha'at. Thank you very much.